Hello there. In this video, we're going to talk about the 10 worst things you can do if you're just started into fly fishing. And these are going to help you along the way just become a better angler and a better human when you're out there fly fishing. So let's start with being a better angler, right? If you choose a crappy fly rod to start off with and terrible line, you're not going to have a great experience. One of the biggest mistakes that anyone new to fly fishing make is they go online and they just find the cheapest, crappiest combo set they can find and they buy it. And then they hate fly fishing because the performance is so terrible with those fly rods. Next, the other big mistake people make is they buy crappy flies. Don't go to the big discount stores online and buy a bunch of flies that might be 50 cents a fly. You're going to get what you paid for, right? These flies are gonna fall apart quickly. They're gonna fall apart while you're tying them on, and they're gonna fall apart the first time you get a fish that latches onto one of them. The next biggest mistake is not respecting your fellow angler, right? If you have a favorite spot in mind that you love to fly fish, but yet there's somebody there, go find another spot. There's nothing worse than coming and sitting right next to somebody else while they're fly fishing a spot, right? Give them at least a 100-yard berth, both downstream or upstream, or 100 yards down the lake edge if you happen to be fishing off the beach, right? That's just the right thing to do when fly fishing. Now, the next thing, a big mistake that new anglers make is when they're going to a catch and release fishery, is they use a subpar net, like with the vinyl type netting. If it's a catch and release fishery, there's a reason why, right? These fish have either been planted in there or they're native, and we're trying to protect that resource for years and years and years of fishing. So get a net that has that catch and release webbing, right? It's kind of a rubberized webbing. It's much easier on the fish. The next big mistake that fly fishers make is they don't read the regulations to a fishery. And I'm guilty of that as well. My stepson Kobe, who you've seen on this channel, went fishing on a particular lake, or wanted to go fishing. And we got there, there's like nobody on the lake. We're like, wow, we got the whole lake to ourselves. And then we ran into somebody and said, hey, the reason why there's nobody here is because the lake closed last month. We're like, all we had to do is check the regulations to make sure it was still open. So know the regulations, know when you can use barbs and when not to use barbs, and whether a fishery is open or not. So super important to know the rules before you go fly fishing. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble, and it can be very expensive if you don't do that quick check before you get out there and fly fish. I forgot a super important big mistake that a lot of new fly fishers make is they don't keep their rod tip down when they're fishing. All right, when you're fishing streamers, you want to almost have that tip buried in the water. When you're fishing dry flies, you want to have the tip as close to the surface of the water as you possibly can. Now, there are times you're going to lift your tip up to be able to do some mending or things like that, but you always want to be in the position to where your rod tip is very close to the water surface. That increases your hookup percentage, right? Because when your rod is up, you have a ton of slack between the tip of the fly rod, the line going into the water, then all the way to your fly. You have to make up for that slack if a fish hits it. So ask any guide, right, that you know. Keep your tip down. You're gonna hear that a ton. If you hire a guide and you're new, they're gonna say, hey, keep your tip down, keep your tip down. So get into that habit early and keeping your rod tip right at or in the surface of the water when fly fishing. So the next big mistake that you can make if you're new to fly fishing is not taking care of your gear. Now, when you're fly fishing, a lot of times you're pulling line off and you've got line dragging down on the ground, especially if you're bank fishing on a river and you need to walk down river, you've got fly line that's down there, right? Manage your fly line. If it gets stuck on a rock or a branch, don't give it a yank. That one time you give it a yank, it's going to start peeling the cover off of this fly line, which exposes the Dacron core, and pretty soon it starts to disintegrate. Once you've cut a place in your fly line, a lot of times you can put a little super glue on it to help manage it so it doesn't start falling apart. But don't be impatient by yanking it off the ground, right? You do want to manage your fly line. Don't step on it either, right? If you need to move, just reel it up real quick, move, and then start over again. If you're dragging your fly line along the rock, it's going to snag rocks and sharp rocks. You're going to step on it. You're going to ruin a $100 fly line. And I also clean mine. Usually I clean with they're specialized cleaners for cleaning fly lines so you don't ruin them. I clean them about once a year and just kind of taking the gunk and film off. If your floating line is starting to sink it's likely because it's really dirty. So take care of your fly line. Another big mistake is not taking the time to practice on how to cast one of these fly rods. Now, there isn't a perfect cast, right? Just getting the fly line 15, 20, 25 feet out is all you need to do when you're first starting out to catch fish. You don't need to bomb it out there 50, 60, 70 feet. You just don't need to. And there's no perfect way of fly casting. I put together a lot of tutorials that have helped a lot of people with their fly cast, but take the time, right? Do a little practicing when you first start out with fly fishing in your backyard, a park, even if you're out there for the first time fishing. You don't need to get the fly rod out, or you don't need to get the fly line out a ton, right? You just need to get it out there far enough to where you might interest a fish. The next big mistake people new to fly fishing do is they ignore the hatch, right? They stick with one thing and they never change up, right? Even if you don't see a hatch happening, if I'm not catching a fish in this setup within 20 minutes to half an hour, I'm finding something else, right? If you keep sticking with the same thing that's not working, you're gonna get the same result. This next one is a big one for me. You can control where your waste goes while fly fishing. I stuff mine in my waders. You can get one of those little garbage cans. Just don't throw it on the ground. I've even picked up trash, right? If there's noticeable trash, I'll come back and I'll have a bunch of trash sitting in my net because I want to do my part to just kind of keep things clean. It's hard for me to ignore when somebody discards a beer can or a soda can or whatever, a plastic bottle that's sitting on a place like this. I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna throw it away when I get back to my rig. All right, the next worst thing you can do is just charging up to any fishery, right? And trust me, I'm guilty of this myself. I get so excited to go fly fishing and I'm just, marching down to the lake edge or marching down to the river and I literally almost step on a fish, right? I've done some videos about walking the fly out. A lot of times that fish is 2 feet off the bank. They're right there. So just take a moment, take your time to approach wherever it is you're fishing, whether it's a creek, a river, a lake. Those fish can be right up close. And if you're charging in like a bull in a china shop, that fish is gone, right? You're gonna scare away your best chance at potentially catching a fish that's right next to shore. So take your time when you go onto a fishery. All right, well that does it. If you need some help with your cast, check out this video right here. 8 minutes and I promise you'll be casting that fly rod a little bit better than you are today. All right, everybody, till the next time, fish on.